Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, Tom Reimann.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Hey, thanks for coming down, man.
I do love to hate movies.
They're good. It's, you know what?
They're so hateable.
They're so, and ever since I started this podcast, it's been really difficult for me to enjoy watching a movie with the stigma of, okay, I find myself trying to like pick movies apart a lot more.
Right. You find yourself being more, the same thing with some of the podcasts that I do, where it's like you find yourself just immediately being critical of a film, even when it's like maybe not supposed. You'll be like watching like Avengers Infinity War and being like, I can see the screenwriting right here. It's not good.
See, that's the thing. It's like it takes a lot more to impress me now than I think it ever did before.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, I think that's fine. You understand you're a movie podcast maven yourself.
Sure, yeah.
You've been in the game for a while. Did you have any like formal like film education or anything like that? You go to film school?
No, I took some film classes in college, but that was it.
Right on.
Just standard undergrad stuff.
I gotcha. Yeah, I did. I was undergrad film major. Took a lot of stuff. I remember the first movie I ever disliked was Lawrence of Arabia. The first movie that everybody was like, oh yeah, this movie's great. And then we all watched it for class and we were like, what are you talking about? This movie's awful.
I've never seen it.
Don't watch it.
I know that
boring. It's long.
Like, this is a super pretentious story, but I know that supposedly Spielberg watches it before he starts shooting any production he's on.
Really?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's like his main influence is Lawrence of Arabia.
That's a terrible influence to pick. It's not a good movie.
I just love the idea of him sitting down to watch that and being like, yes, I'm absorbing this. Time to go make Ready Player One.
I mean, look, I get you get your pregame rituals or whatever, but that's not... If you're going to do that, you can't do that for every kind of movie. You can't let every movie be influenced by Lawrence of Arabia because then it's just going to be boring and long. At this point, I mean, I really feel like Steven Spielberg is phoning it in more than any popular director.
Sometimes.
What did you think of, I mean, we'll dive right into the box office.
Sure.
Which it's just fallen out of the top 10 is Ready Player One this week. Number 12 of the box office.
I thought it was very okay.
Same.
It was one of the okayest movies I've seen in a while. Like, Spielberg has a baseline quality even when he is phoning it in on a movie like this.
Right.
So there's still like he knows how to make like cool action sequences that don't do the thing that a lot of movies do nowadays where they like in a Michael Bay film, it's just confusing in the action sequences. Like he's still able to like, for example, in the car, like the racing part in the beginning, like he's still able to keep all the action focused on the main car, even though there's all this crazy shit happening.
Right.
And he doesn't always do it, but he's better than most about having the camera be in a place where it's physically possible for a camera to be, even if it's a big effect shot.
Yeah.
And that like films that like a Jurassic World or something, they just don't do that. They'll put the cameras do these crazy sweeps and stuff. It's like a camera couldn't be there. Like,
right.
So it immediately takes you out of it, even if you don't realize it.
Taking liberties with the usage of CGI and special effects camera work that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, even phoning it in, Steven Spielberg is still getting nominated for Best Picture and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's still getting shit done.
But yeah, that's the thing. And that's, and it feels weird for me to even talk about that because I have still yet to see some of Spielberg's really early, most acclaimed work. I still haven't seen Jaws. I've never seen Schindler's List.
You haven't seen Jaws?
Never seen Jaws.
I'm about to leave this room.
Tom, I'm so, listen, I don't know. This is our first time meeting. You don't know this about me.
I don't know anything about you.
I grew up extremely sheltered. Okay, so I had very, very strict Christian upbringing.
Okay.
Wasn't allowed to watch anything that was PG-13 until I was 13. Wasn't allowed to watch anything that was R-rated until I was 17, unless I got parental clearance beforehand too.
Sure.
Like I remember even there was one year it was Christmas time in my family. We were decorating the Christmas tree, and we were watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And
that's PG.
It is PG, but there's that scene where one of the knights winds up at the nunnery,
Castle Anthrax.
the Castle Anthrax, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as that scene came on, my parents were like, "All right, you got to leave the room," because they apparently didn't want to. This was the dawn of DVD. They didn't know about like the chapter skip ahead feature, so they couldn't just skip ahead. They're like, "You have to leave the room until the scene is over."
But even still, like fast forward was a thing beforehand, so
I don't think they wanted me to even see.
They were just like
the
no.
possibility.
Yeah.
Here's some Alvin and the Chipmunks sped up dialogue about blowjobs.
Yeah.
And at the time I was probably like 12 or 13 when we were watching that.
Jaws is PG too.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like, it's the violence, it's the blood.
Sure. I had the opposite problem. My parents gave me Jaws on VHS when I was 4 or 5.
Really?
Because I wanted it so badly. Like I was so into sharks. I was reading all these shark books and I was like, I want Jaws. And they're like, all right. They gave me a VHS copy that I wore out. I wore out like 3 different VHS copies of Jaws.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. I've never met anybody who's worn out a VHS copy of anything before.
Oh, yeah. I did that with Jaws and Ghostbusters.
I feel like if I were to do any VHS running out, probably would have been VeggieTales.
Sure.
That's what I got.
Sure. Yeah.
That or the DuckTales movie. Watched a lot of that on road trips.
It's solid film.
We had a little like portable TV that my mom she got a AC adapter for the cigarette lighter in the car. We had a big minivan because we would drive down from Texas, where I grew up, to Louisiana, where we had family in New Orleans. So we would drive there a lot, and so it's a lot of long car drives. So she just bungee cord in this portable TV, and we would just watch Disney movies in the back.
Sure, might as well get in your DuckTales during that drive.
DuckTales, Little Mermaid, that's all the good stuff.
All good stuff.
Yeah,
all good stuff.
So now you know, as a baseline, I've caught up significantly, but there's still definitely giant glaring blind spots, unfortunately. You could probably, this is a game I have not played on this podcast, but I played at some shows I've done. Like, name a movie as like a movie that you think somebody should have seen just in general. I probably haven't seen it. Like
somebody who's like in film or like interested in film, or like just like the general person.
I mean both. I mean,
The Godfather.
Godfather I've seen, but I didn't watch that until I was like in my 20s.
Terminator 2.
Never seen it, or the original.
Wow.
Never seen any of the Aliens.
Never seen any of the Aliens. Casablanca.
Nope, never seen it.
Man,
told you. I just ate
The Shawshank Redemption.
I watched that on a plane maybe 2 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm really in the dark, Tom.
Yeah, you've got some blind spots there.
I know. I've tried to correct them as much as I can. But.
We did a back when I was at Cracked, we did a episode of the podcast where we had we had Soren Bowie come on, who has also never seen Terminator 2. And we did an episode where it was just him trying to describe the plot of Terminator 2 just based on what he gleaned from just being in the popular pop culture sphere.
Right.
And it was very funny.
I mean, all I know about Terminator 2, I went at Universal Studios, they have that Terminator 2 ride. So I know that there's something that goes on. It is a sweet ride.
Yeah.
Man, he shows up. That's all I know really, though. It's like, oh, he's metal, and then there's a liquid metal guy, and then they're riding motorcycles, and somebody's arm gets shot off, but not really. And
then Guns N' Roses is just there.
Right.
It's all over the place.
Yeah. Splashed throughout the movie.
Yeah, the music video for the song that they made for that movie has Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And the story of the music video is Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Terminator who has been sent to terminate Axl Rose, and he's walking through a Guns N' Roses concert searching the crowd for Axl Rose. And it's like, that's a fun premise already, but it's even your baseline programming should know, like, no, he's up on the stage. Like, you have all your detailed memory banks of like who Axl Rose is. Like, no, you went to a Guns N' Roses show looking for him, and you're looking in the crowd.
That's a pretty egregious oversight for like the one file of like, oh, Axl Rose, yeah, he's the lead singer of the band. We should know exactly where he is.
Like, how many possible like data points could be in his file beyond that? Like,
he must have just rubbed it up against a magnet or something. That's
probably. Yeah, he just just fucked his memory banks right up.
Look, magnets are terrifying. That's one of the scariest parts about Brave Little Toaster, which is a movie I watched over and over and over again as a kid, despite it also being terrifying. That opening scene with the air conditioning?
Yes. Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I do remember that scene.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, wow, you're really daring the children to keep watching this film.
Oh, yeah. But that's the thing. Like, for some reason, I don't know how... I guess it's probably just because it's cute and animated. Movies like that go right past the parental blind spots.
Oh, yeah. They just put it up like Land Before Time. That is a devastating movie to show to your kids. And like, but parents just put on, it's like, oh, it's a cartoon and it's dinosaurs. And it that was the movie, Bambi didn't really get to me, but Land Before Time, because I was, super into dinosaurs as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a movie I watched over and over and over again, and it destroyed me emotionally every single time I watched it.
Oh, it's devastating.
It was the first time I realized my parents are going to die, and I'm probably going to, best case scenario is that I will witness them die.
Right. And that, fun lessons to learn as a child.
It's great.
I don't know. I think have you ever see that movie We're Back?
Oh yeah.
That's another terrifying, because the villain there is
that screwhead guy or whatever.
Yeah. Screw eyes.
Screw eyes. There you go.
His literal screws for eyes. He's turning dinosaurs against.
You know what? He's brand
children.
Conscious. He really.
You know what? Very on brand.
Yeah, he
probably
figured out
have a good social media following.
Yeah, he figured out what he wanted his thing to be, and he really went for it.
But I am very proud on some level of filmmakers who can get scary shit in and sneak it past the parents.
Like Spielberg.
Yeah, Spielberg pulled it off.
Yeah, in the early 80s, man, he was like, all right, you guys, I'm going to do Poltergeist. I'm going to do Gremlins. I'm going to do Goonies that has some wild shit in it. I'm going to do the Indiana Jones movies. Raiders of the Lost Ark is PG. That movie is fucked up.
Yeah.
But he was just sliding it in there.
Sliding it right past. You know something else is fucked up?
What's that?
Didn't see Goonies until I was 22.
That's okay. Yeah, all right.
It is what it is. I did love The Sandlot, though.
Sandlot's great. That's a great film.
But it's wholesome for the most part, except for the,
Yeah, pretty much.
For the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, even though it's one of those movies that I forget Dennis Leary is in.
Wait, Dennis Leary's in that
Dennis
movie?
Leary is Scotty Small's stepdad.
Oh.
He's the stepdad who they steal the baseball from.
That's right. Yep. Oh, God, you got it right. All right, let's talk about the box office this week. This has been a big week.
Oh, yeah.
To no surprise of anybody, Avengers is still dominating at the top of the box office, $112.5 million. Just past $1 billion worldwide.
Yeah.
Fastest any movie has ever done it.
It's a week.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I get it. When I saw it Thursday night last week, so it's Thursday premiere and at the ArcLight in Culver City, and it was just it was packed.
Yeah.
And the audience was it was a good audience. Nobody was really talking, and the only problem with the only bummer about it was when the jokes hit, every joke hit, but the laughs would be so loud that you'd miss the next couple of words.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So I saw it again.
It's feeding more money to the Disney Marvel machine.
I saw it again the next day.
Oh God.
Yeah, just to really absorb it. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it.
I saw it this week. I saw it on a Friday morning matinee, 10 a.m.
Sure.
There were maybe 10 people in the movie theater. A lot of old people. A lot of people who I wouldn't expect to want to go see a big giant superhero movie that's, 12 movies into this universe.
I think 19.
19? Yeah. I mean, I knew there was no way.
I think the count is seriously 19.
But I am not a big superhero movie person.
Okay.
I liked Thor Ragnarok a lot because I think it deviated from.
Oh yeah, it was excellent, and Taika Waititi is amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I've definitely mentioned this on the podcast before, but I love a superhero movie that transcends being a superhero movie.
Right, that finds some way to play with the genre.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love Ant-Man, but I liked that it was different in that way. It made it into a heist movie.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the Guardians movies because they feel I'm a fan of James Gunn's movies anyway, and I could watch that movie. Both those movies felt like James Gunn movies to me. They didn't feel like Disney movies. I can feel this creator's presence in this film, and it was the same thing with Thor Ragnarok and Taika Waititi.
Yeah, and the thing with Avengers that really surprised me was it felt to me like it took the standard superhero kind of story, flipped it by making Thanos essentially the protagonist. He's the main character. And then also, it's got this crazy level of Shakespearean tragedy to it, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That I didn't see coming from
it was
a Marvel movie.
It was an interesting... It felt... with 10 years of buildup, the Marvel movies have been talking about Thanos since, I think, the first Avengers is when they first mentioned him. So it's been 10 years of buildup for this, and then 6 years just for Thanos himself to show up. So it's you go into the movie thinking, oh, well, this can do nothing. The expectation is so high, it can do nothing but let you down. But I wasn't let down by it. It felt appropriately epic to me. I felt that same feeling that I had when I saw the very first Avengers, where it was oh, I'm excited to see all these characters together because they found the right combinations of people to put together and have fun storylines.
You know, it's interesting. I lost my enjoyment of superhero movies right around when Avengers came out. Because I went and saw it in theaters and I was like, oh, this is kind of... It played out a lot more stock and boring than I thought it was going to.
Yeah. I think going back and watching it now, it feels much more stock because it's just another giant... Everybody bands together to beat a giant laser in the sky, and that's like so many superhero movies. But I like that this Infinity War doesn't do that.
Right.
It's all about Thanos, and they put Thanos through like the hero's arc, and he's the villain.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
But that's that's the beauty of having just a great villain in a story, is somebody who the filmmakers find a way for you to feel and empathize. If not, you're not going to agree with what they're doing. Obviously, nobody wants to commit genocide for them, but probably nobody wants to commit genocide who's seeing this movie.
Maybe use the gauntlet to make infinite resources or more planets, Thanos.
Look,
Why not do that?
I'd love it if he just made more bubble guns.
The
whimsy.
We mentioned this on one of our podcasts that we do, but I love the low key detail that he clearly thinks bubbles are hilarious because he keeps turning shit into bubbles.
It's great.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, it's funny.
It is. It's super funny.
But yeah, it's the best of the Marvel movies. I think. I mean, with Thor Ragnarok, actually, no, the villain in Thor Ragnarok's pretty cool. Kate Blanchett's pretty great. Mm-hmm. But the best Marvel movies have an interesting villain. Yeah. Like Guardians 2, I thought Kurt Russell was a really interesting villain. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man Homecoming, I thought Michael Keaton was great. Yeah. That was a great character.
Black Panther, Killmonger is a fantastic villain.
Excellent villain. Like, that's the only time, like, I felt in a superhero movie until I saw Infinity War. But watching Black Panther, when Killmonger dies in the end, I'm like, am I gonna cry? like I felt it like a little bit of like
something.
Yeah,
man. Oh, he would have been so great to keep seeing.
Yeah, it was. But like you said, like the Shakespearean tragedy of it. It was like, oh, it's just such a freaking tragedy. Yeah, this character.
And Avengers is really at this point, it's going to continue to dominate. I think for at least the next several weeks, probably at least another month. Black Panther is still in the top 10, and it's been in theaters for 12 weeks.
Yeah, I think it goes digital this week too.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna
great.
Make so much money. Oh my god.
Yeah, some friends and former crack coworkers went to film school with Ryan Coogler, the director.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's like a couple degrees of separation. I'm like, yeah.
Now I gotta go. I've never seen any other Ryan Coogler movies. I never saw Creed, never saw Fruitvale Station. Gotta go back and watch those.
Yeah, man.
So number 2 at the box office, Overboard, first new release on the box office this week. Anna Faris, Eugenio Derbez.
Remake of the Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell film of the same name.
Yep.
Except the genders are flipped.
Flip-flopping the genders.
It's still kind of sexual assaulty.
Have you seen it?
I've seen the original. I didn't see the new one, but like the premise still seems like. I mean, the premise is like the guy in the original. It's the kind of aloof woman, Goldie Hawn, falls overboard and gets amnesia, and Kurt Russell's like, "Hey, we're together," and it's like, and they eventually fall in love, so it's like fine. And then of course that movie gave us the Hollywood power couple, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell.
Right.
But there's like this undercurrent of like that's like a felony what you're doing.
Oh yeah, there's like, so many wrong.
Yeah,
there's some kind of theft going on.
Yeah, and flipping the genders, having Anna Faris be the one who's like, yeah, we're together, and you work. I guess you work for me or something. Mm-hmm. It's still like you're still like, yeah, you're still kidnapping a dude. Like, I don't know.
I think
it's a weird movie to remake, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a weird movie to remake, especially in like the current climate. I know obviously you're trying to do whatever, girl power or something, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe the movie takes those elements out of it.
I don't know how it can.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, that's kind of baked into the premise of the thing.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't really, I don't know. I think there have been in the past, because the whole idea of a gender swap reboot has been going on for probably a good 3 years at this point, and that seems to be one of the more palatable ways that people have been rebooting movies.
Oh yeah, we get Ocean's 8 this summer too.
Yep, Ocean's 8's coming out, and there's Splash is getting a male reboot with Channing Tatum
as the mermaid.
Yeah,
yes.
So there's some chances where I think it could work. Ocean's 8 does look quite good.
Sure.
I always, I love the Ocean's movies. They're just fun little get all the stars together and make them go on a casino heist.
I never saw Ocean's 13 because I was like,
Ocean's 13 got some nice little emotional stakes to it.
All right,
I recommend it.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it. But yeah, I like everybody that's in Ocean's 8, so I'll probably end up watching it.
But it's like, I think if you're going to do the gender swap thing, you got to make sure, just make it fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, based on the vibe, Overboard is going for that and just trying to be like, oh yeah, this is just a fun time.
Okay. I mean,
I have no idea though.
Yeah. I probably won't go watch it in the theater, but I'll probably end up watching it on streaming or something.
If I still had cable and it was on like TNT or TBS Saturday morning, it'd be a movie it's a hangover movie.
It's a recovery movie.
Yeah. It's one of those you just, soak it up with with whatever Postmates you scrounge up.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to get Grubhub. Give me some nachos. I'm going to watch this goddamn movie.
Number 3 at the box office, A Quiet Place, $7.6 million, 5 weeks in, still doing top business, doing great. Sleeper hit of the season so far, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you feel about this movie?
Haven't seen it yet.
Oh.
What do you think about it?
Interesting. I liked it. I thought it was a well-made thriller. There's some the problem with the film is that it falls into the same trap a lot of horror movies do, where the characters do things that are like objectively stupid just to further the peril.
Oh, right, yeah.
So it kind of you could nitpick it that way, but I think it's still I thought it was a good movie and it's pretty effective.
Yeah.
In what it does.
That's one of the things. I mean, I guess you got to make decisions like that as a writer.
Yeah.
To make your characters seem human and flawed.
Yeah, and that was I guess it was the point they were going for, is that the married couple. It's like, yeah, the overall point. I just felt it could have been executed better, but the overall point I think was that when like, for example, when an accident happens at work, like let's say you work at like a hardware store and somebody cuts their fingers off with the saw, it happens because it's a safety procedure and protocol that you've done 1,000 times and you start to get lazy about it.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in the movie. So to a degree, it's like, okay, I'm with it. But it's just like, there are some things that are even still like, oh, why did you make that decision?
Right.
But I think most of it can be explained by just like what's gonna screw you up in a routine like this is somebody forgets to lock the door. Like, just because it's a thing you've done 100 times and you get so used to it, it becomes so routine that you stop paying attention to why it's important.
Right.
And I think it does that mostly effectively. It's definitely worth seeing.
I'm gonna go see it in theaters. I got.
You should. It's very. You start to feel like. Get very irritated at anybody making any noise.
Yeah.
From what I understand, the original script had no dialogue whatsoever, no spoken dialogue.
And they added a little bit.
But still not much. It's still mostly sign. Yeah.
I like a bold choice like that.
It's pretty bold.
I think that's another one. I think it's gonna stay. It's got lasting staying power. It's added very clearly at this point, added to like modern horror movie canon.
You said it's number 3?
Number 3.
Wow.
And it's been bouncing between 1 and 2 for the past several weeks.
Man, it's really hanging in there.
Doing well. Number 4 is I Feel Pretty, another movie that is very much hanging in there. Just crossed $4.9 million this week in revenue. Broke its budget finally, $37 million total.
Okay.
3 movies in, 3 weeks into the box office. Still doing well. People still want to feel good about themselves.
Sure.
And they're going to let Chinese movie studios tell them how to do it.
Is it a Chinese venture?
Yep.
All right.
H Brothers.
Okay. All right. I haven't seen it. I don't really have any thoughts about it.
I haven't seen it either. It's one of those things. It's like, okay, this is not catering to me.
No, it's like, it feels like along the same lines as Shallow Hal, but not exactly.
Another movie I've never seen.
Oh well, you know.
But I know the premise.
Right?
Of it. Jack Black sees everybody
in the interview
of everybody.
Yeah. So it's kind of similar to that. I don't know. I'm clearly not its demographic.
Yeah, no, it's a couple of white guys hanging out.
Let's sit here in this room and pontificate about the cultural significance of I Feel Pretty.
Oh, yes. Well, you know what we should, I think this is probably much more up our alley, is talking about Rampage, number 5 of the box office.
Man.
Have you seen it?
I did see Rampage.
What did you think? You're the first person who I've had on who's actually seen it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah?
It was the same director as San Andreas. It was a little slow. And I was when I first heard about the film, I was a little disappointed because Rampage, if you're not aware, is this old arcade game where you play as monsters smashing up a city. So I heard like, oh, they're making Rampage into a movie, and I thought, well, clearly it's like we're making Rampage with The Rock, and I'm like, well, clearly you make that a comedy.
Yeah,
and it's not. I mean, there's funny parts in it, but it's just like a big monster movie, disaster movie. But it's the best giant monster movie that I've seen probably in 10 years. Like,
yeah,
it's better than the Kong movie that came out, Skull Island. It's better than the Godzilla remake. Just in terms of
better than Pacific Rim.
Oh yeah,
man.
I aggressively do not like Pacific Rim.
Oh really?
Yeah, that is a sore spot for me.
Do you have something against Guillermo del Toro as a director?
No.
Interesting.
No, I just think that I think that a lot of his movies. I think Pacific Rim is his worst film. But I think that a lot of his movies are visually arresting and very good at making you feel the feelings you're supposed to feel. But I think that they're also mostly pretty dumb.
Yeah.
From a scripting standpoint.
I mean, this is actually perfect timing. We can dovetail right into this.
Sure.
The reason why you have come in today, Tom, is to talk about why you hate Shape of Water.
Hate's a strong word, but I definitely am... I'm baffled as to why they decided it was the best picture of the year.
I'm with you there. Here, for those of you who have not seen Shape of Water yet, a little background. 2017 American romantic dark fantasy drama film directed by Guillermo del Toro, written by Guillermo del Toro and Vanessa Taylor. Set in Baltimore in 1962, this story follows a mute custodian at a high-security government laboratory who falls in love with a captured humanoid amphibian creature. It did a crazy amount of critical awards.
Yeah.
It won, top 10 films of the year from American Film Institute. It won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Production Design, and Best Score at the Oscars. Best Director and Best Score at the Golden Globes. Best Director at the BAFTAs, and Best Picture and Best Director at the Critics' Choice Awards.
And it was nominated for a couple of the performances, like Sally Hawkins, is that her name?
Yep, Sally Hawkins.
Richard Jenkins.
Sally Hawkins, Richard Jenkins. It was nominated for 13 at the Academy Awards, the most out of any other film in the races.
Man.
Picture, director, actress, supporting actress for Octavia Spencer.
Octavia Spencer, yeah.
Screenplay, cinematography, costume design.
Screenplay?
Yep.
Get out.
It was nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
That was a pun, unintentionally.
Thank God.
It lost to Get Out.
Thank God.
Get the hell out of here. Best Screenplay.
And that's in Best Original Screenplay.
Oosh.
No less.
Yeah. I was, when Shape of Water was coming out, I was excited to see this movie. Like, I like Guillermo del Toro's movies for the most part. The only one I really don't like is Pacific Rim. Like Pan's Labyrinth, Devil's Backbone, even fucking Blade 2, the Hellboy movies. I wasn't crazy about Crimson Peak, but I liked the look of it. So yeah, I'm on board with Guillermo del Toro. It's just this movie, I felt like it runs into, I think the screenplay is weak. And I think it does this thing that he sort of leans on a little bit too much sometimes. I think Del Toro does, where his movies are kind of like magic realism or like a heightened reality, like fairy tales.
He likes to tell fairy tale and fantasy type of stories,
right? But parts of the movie will be pretty much grounded, and then another part of the movie, she'll stuff towels in the crack of her bathroom and completely fill it up with water so she can have sex with the fish man.
Right?
I'm like, that's not how the world works.
No.
So
the Shape of Water does not fill up a cube perfectly.
No, and certainly not in a room above a movie theater where you just stuff some towels under the door. Right. Like the weight of it, I mean, before it even filled up, I mean, it would punch out the window or punch out the door or the floor would collapse. There's a number of reasons why it wouldn't work. And it's just, also, it would take hours.
Yeah.
Hours for that shit to happen.
Yeah, there's definitely there's too much work to try and get her to fuck the fish guy.
I know. That's my main problem with the movie, is that she falls in love with the fish man immediately for no reason. because we're never given any indication that the fish man has any more sentience than like a primate.
Yeah.
Because all he does is he learns sign language, and he learns like, oh, she brings me eggs, she plays me music, I like this. But we're never, he's never affectionate.
Right.
Like she just walks into the bathroom and takes all her clothes off and like embraces him, and he's just like, oh, well, it's like she's like having sex with an orangutan. Like,
yeah, it's like if they made a biopic about Coco the gorilla, and then all of a sudden the trainer is like, oh, I've been wanting to fuck a gorilla my entire life.
Sure. It's just so weird that she instantly, I get how the movie's presenting it. She's like, oh, I can't speak. I feel like an outcast and a weirdo. Like I don't belong. So this fish man is in the same boat. He's an outcast and weirdo and he doesn't belong. But it's like, you don't fall in love over that connection. Like she immediately becomes infatuated with the fish man.
On a level of like when we see relationships blossom in movies, between just normal humans as a baseline.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, there's a lot of emphasis that's put on the people being like the same kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is a really dangerous way to present romance to the outside world.
Oh, yeah.
Already as a baseline level. That's not healthy.
And it does another thing that a lot of male-centered romances tend to do, where it's like you see it in Stranger Things, you see it in Splash, you see it in I know there's another real obvious example where it's
Lady in the Water.
Maybe. I actually never saw
Lady in the Water either.
It's where you basically have this. This is an interesting case because obviously in The Shape of Water, it's the inverse, where it's a woman falling in love with, I guess, a man. Where it's like you're presenting, like the protagonist is presenting the world to his romantic interest, if that makes sense. It's like you're falling in love with a child. It doesn't know what anything is. So like in Stranger Things.
Oh, so like Big.
Like Big, or you sort of. It's like a fetishization of like, oh, I have this woman who doesn't understand anything, so I'm going to be the one that's going to teach her about the world. Mm-hmm. It's this weird. I'm sure there must be a name for it, but like the best example I can think of is Stranger Things with Mike and Eleven, where he has to like teach her about what the world is, and it's like this fantasy of having a woman that's like a pet, and like doesn't.
It's sort of like a reverse of the manic pixie dream girl trope in a way,
sort of.
Where like because that whole trope is based around the woman being the quirky person who teaches you how to live and be and like break out of his shell. And this is just like, oh, but you don't know anything about the world. Let me show you everything about how everything is supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's just it's very strange.
And it was written by a man, so it's like he just kind of inversed it. So it's like we still get this weird, like you're basically having a romantic relationship with a child. Mm-hmm. Like it's like you said, it's kind of a dangerous way, just at a baseline, to present a romance.
Oh, extremely dangerous.
Man, there's another. I love all the actors in this movie. I think the performances are all great across the board. But some of the characters just don't. Like Richard Jenkins' entire subplot doesn't matter.
Yeah. He's in there, so you can. He's a narrator.
Yeah,
he's in there, so you can get more.
He's kind of our proxy.
Yeah,
but like his whole backstory with being like. He wasn't the advertising world, and they seem to imply that he was sort of forced out because they found out he was gay.
Right.
And then he has like that storyline with where he's like attracted to the soda jerk at like the pie shop.
Right. Really put the jerk in soda jerk. That guy.
Oh, yeah,
did.
He turns out to be a racist and a homophobe.
Oh yeah.
And so I guess it like informed the character, but not really. Like none of those scenes actually seem to play a part in his decision making. Like he's like at first, like when Eliza is like, we got to break the fish man out. He's like, no, I can't do that. And he goes off to try to sell his ad. And then the guy's like, no, it's never going to be the right time for you to come sell this ad. You're never going to come back.
Right.
And then he comes back from that and he's like, you're right. The fish man is important. Like that's all that matters. It's like, how does his journey to that point make him make that decision to help you break into a government facility and steal a wild animal.
Right.
He even says it's a wild animal. Like when it eats his cat's face.
Yeah.
And like runs out and scratches him, and like Eliza comes back and he's like, "Oh no, it's fine." Like he's not even mad at him. He's like, "It's fine. It's a wild animal." You said it right there. That is a wild animal. It's not a human. And I feel like they're like the whole movie is spent like with people sort of impressing like human emotions and traits on it, and we are never given any evidence that it actually feels that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of logical leaps that are taken in this movie. And so many of them are based around, hey, let's make this fish man feel our emotions.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's definitely not just mirroring what's going on.
No.
That would be silly. Why would that be happening?
Yeah, it's my favorite logic leap is there's a ticking clock that's introduced once they get the fish man out, and it's that they have to wait for the canal to fill up with rainwater so they can dump him in the canal, which will then empty in the ocean. And he starts to like die, like he's dying for them keeping him in her bathtub.
Right.
Waiting for this canal to fill up. They can see the ocean from the canal. Drive him to the ocean. Like, why are you waiting for... It's like the movie is built on this ticking clock, and it's like, we can see the fucking ocean.
Hey, man, gas is expensive in the 50s, I guess. On a janitor's salary for government, you're probably making no money.
The Russian spy subplot is baffling.
Yeah. I did not understand why any of that was in the movie.
I don't know. And they do a weird thing where he decides like, oh, I'm a Russian spy, but I really care about this fish man, so I'm going to help. He helps them steal the fish man, and then his KGB handlers come to his house, and he is prepared to stab them with a dull cake knife. Mm-hmm. He just has it behind his back, and then they leave. He's like, oh, okay. And when they call him out later, like, we need to have a meeting, and you see that he knows they're going to kill him. He shows up to the meeting, so you're expecting them, because we just saw that he was prepared to stab them with a dull butter knife. And then he shows up to the meeting, and he's like, hey, crazy rain, right? And then like the guy comes out and just shoots him, and he's like totally unprepared for it. He gets shot a bunch, and he's just like, please don't shoot me. It's like, you just showed us that this character was like ready for these guys to roll on him and try to kill him, and he goes to this obvious murder meeting completely unprepared.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was expecting him to whip out a gun and be like, surprise, motherfuckers, but he doesn't. He just...
Look, this movie's full of really dumb people.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, for whatever reason, a lot of that is excused because it's like, oh, it's a fantasy movie. It's not. It's a fairy tale. It's not supposed to be realistic.
But it isn't always. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, you mentioned you mentioned that you are a fan of Guillermo del Toro. Yeah. So, what was your experience like watching this movie and being disappointed by it when you went to saw it for the first time and on subsequent viewings? What was it? What did it feel like for that?
It just felt like. It didn't feel as sort of sour as watching Crimson Peak, because I was excited for Crimson Peak and I went and saw it and I was like, oh, this was just kind of, it didn't do anything new really. It was a beautiful movie, but it didn't really do anything new. It wasn't quite like that for this movie because Shape of Water is a beautiful film, and the performances are excellent, and it got genuine emotions out of me, but it was like I couldn't not see. It was just like, man, it's a shame that like the story isn't satisfying.
Right. It's a movie that's got it's a beautifully crafted movie. Like, yes. I can understand why it got as many nominations as it did, because the below the line stuff is all really, really well done.
He's an excellent director. I think he deserved director, but like the best picture, I was like, that's confusing to me.
Yeah. What did you think best picture should have been?
Probably Get Out.
Yeah. I would have loved if Get Out had won. My pick would have been Dunkirk. I was a big Dunkirk fan.
I still haven't seen Dunkirk.
Oh man, you gotta see it.
It's weird. I like Christopher Nolan, but I'm sort of like burned out on war movies, even though I've never seen Christopher Nolan make a war movie. So it's like I should be amped about this.
It's a really good. I mean,
and I've heard nothing but good things about it.
It takes a nice little flip of the genre a little bit.
I would have preferred because Get Out won for original screenplay, and normally traditionally that's been sort of like the concession prize for like, okay, we recognize that this was actually the better, probably should have got best picture, but we'll give you original screenplay.
Right.
I would have preferred if Kumail's movie had gotten
Big Sick.
Yeah, I got an original screenplay, and then Get Out had won best picture.
See, I thought Big Sick was fine, but I was really thrown by a lot of the writer decisions. The writer, like I could see, like you said with Infinity War, I could see some of the writing.
Yeah, when you can
at
see,
play,
where you can see the writer. It's like, like in Shape of Water, when we're shown that Michael Shannon likes his wife to be silent, just to give him a reason to focus on Eliza. Just so he has a reason to be paying attention to her and notice that she's acting suspicious. It's
right.
like, well, that's real sweaty. And then like when he calls him in, like after he proudly shows that he doesn't wash it, he washes his hands before he pees.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it kind of informs his character. Like that makes sense because he's a guy like, well, I only care about washing my hands before I touch my dick, but after that, like I can inflict myself on anybody else. I just don't want
whatever
that
I
garbage
want.
on me. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So like when he calls them both, Eliza and Zelda, into his office, like the only reason for that meeting is for him to sit down the two protagonists and be like, all right, I'm a racist. And I'm the worst kind of Bible thumper. So I'm the bad guy. Okay, go on and enjoy your day. That's the only point of that scene is for him to tell us that he's a bad guy. And he like him and the general and all of the villains in the movie like irrationally hate the fish man.
Yeah. Because he's the other. He's from South America.
Right.
And they don't understand him.
I guess it starts to make sense with Michael Shannon as like we're shown that like this is his last gig before he gets to retire. He's got this nice house, and then like when they lose the fish man, the general's like, "We're gonna unborn. You're gonna be unborn. Like you're gonna get burned for this."
Right. Yeah.
Then I understand why he would hate the fish man, but like those stakes aren't given until 10 minutes before the end of the film. So it's like before that, it's like, well, he's just a guy who's evil for no reason. There was a part that I had in my mind that I wanted to point out, and I just lost it.
Well, let's go through. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how logical leapy this movie is, and there's a lot of spoon feeding that goes on. Let's just break it down from the very beginning. You're sort of slammed in the face with like, all right, this is the outsider character. Eliza's not really she's just there.
The first 5 to 10 minutes of this movie are Amelie.
Right.
Yeah.
Another movie I've never seen. Stuck in the Background.
It's pretty good.
It's
a good movie.
It's a French movie, right? My parents are actually, surprisingly enough, for very conservative Texans, big fans of France.
Cool.
As a country.
More power to them.
Yeah, they probably would have been overjoyed for me to watch that movie. But yeah, there's a lot of spoon feeding, like, she's trying to live her life in the world and everything's against her, and then Michael Shannon shows up and he's a big bad right from the get-go, and then he gets his fingers bitten off.
Yeah.
All the shit starts to go awry, and she's like, breaking the rules, doing stuff she's not supposed to do because she feels like she's allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, romance blossoms.
Yeah.
It's
very,
for a movie that this simplistic to have captured the hearts of so many people on the critical end of things.
Yeah.
It's boggling.
Oh man, there's so many, like when she writes the date down on her calendar, docks, canal, there's no reason for her to do that.
Right.
Like she knows I'm going to go to the canal in 3 days. She doesn't need to write it on her own calendar to remind herself.
Of course, but how are we going to know?
How is Michael Shannon going to know where to go? That's the reason.
How are they going to find out when he breaks into her apartment?
Right, because he storms into Zelda's apartment and rips his fingers off in front of her face, which is the point where my wife had to leave the room and throw up.
Fair.
Her husband, who he'd been hearing about all the entire movie, spills the beans. He's like, the mute girl has her. Yeah. And he's like, I overheard Zelda talking to her on the phone about it. Okay. One, that's real convenient.
Yeah.
Two, she was talking on the phone to the mute girl? Really? Like, how did that exchange go?
They definitely didn't have those. You ever mess around with one of those deaf relay services?
Yeah, I used to be an insurance agent, and I've used that once or twice, where you have to relay through somebody who translates for a deaf or mute person.
We used to do that for prank phone calls back in the day, so not for your purposes. Basically, just to make a relay operator.
Well, they have to do it because
things.
You're paying them,
right?
So they're like, well, I'll say this,
but yeah. So it's like there's no explanation for a lot of the stuff, and you're just expected to go along with it. And I don't think for somebody of his clout, as Guillermo del Toro has, this feels like a big misstep, but everybody
was just on board with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those oddities. It's going to be like Traffic. Like people, or not Traffic. It's going to be like Crash. People are going to look back and be like, why did we give this movie all the awards?
Well, especially because this is a year, and everybody already had a lot of controversy this year at the Oscars because of the whole Three Billboards and Shape of Water sort of duel that had been going on.
Three Billboards was another movie that let me down. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was that great. I
had a guy named Jake Weissman on to talk about Three Billboards a little while ago, and I watched the movie and I was like, oh yeah, this is really cool. And then I'm talking to him about it. Turned me around. And I was like, oh yeah, no, you're right. There are a lot of there's a lot of like filmmakery devices that are happening here.
Yeah.
I don't know, why do you think the critical reaction to this movie was so positive?
I don't know.
Do you think it's sort of wish fulfillment in a way of like people being like, no, yeah, we can make, classic old Hollywood movies and they can still exist and they can still be fine? Because the last time that a movie sort of in this vibe that is created that Shape of Water did was The Artist. In sort of, we're hearkening back to a lot of old Hollywood style storytelling and the optics of it are very much in line with the way movies used to be in like the 50s or the 60s. And The Artist sort of had the same kind of vibe for, really old school, like 20s and 30s filmmaking.
Yeah, The Artist also tapped into this thing that the Academy fucking loves, is when you make a movie about Hollywood.
Right.
When you make a movie about the industry, they eat that shit up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This movie doesn't really have that, but I think maybe it touches on some of the same things because there's a lot of references to old Hollywood in it. They live above a movie theater. They're constantly showing old clips of, like, there's the Bojangles clip and there's the oh gosh, I forgot her name. It's the Spanish American or Mexican woman that used to.
Oh man,
she'd show up in Bugs Bunny cartoons. I can't remember her name, but anyways, it's when they're planning the theft, and it's like you're hearing the music of that, and then it's also on the TV in Richard Jenkins' apartment. I wish I could remember her name.
She
I'm very embarrassed.
She was probably in Three Caballeros too, if I were to guess. But I don't know who you're. The only Hispanic woman from TV who immediately is coming to mind is a woman whose name I can't even remember what her name is right now, and she just dances around. That's it. That's all I got. Dancing Mexican lady.
Oh man. Well, I mean, in our defense, this was like 60 years ago.
60 years ago, we're a couple of white guys. We're not in tune with it. I'm just gonna Google dancing Mexican woman.
Oh wow.
And we'll see what happens.
All right, edit this out.
No, this is never gonna get edited out. Nope. All of a sudden, just okay. Well, just horrifying. Maybe dancing Mexican woman celebrity. Horrifying videos are showing up right now. Nope. Nothing is happening.
All right.
This was a great tangent to go on.
Yeah, I'm really glad we chased this thread.
Podcastily.
Another favorite dumb thing that I have about this movie is that when they randomly introduce his ET powers 2/3 of the way through the film.
Oh, yeah.
Why does he have ET powers?
Because he's a god.
I guess. Like they have Michael Shannon going, you really are a god.
Right.
Like right before he cuts his throat. I love Michael Shannon.
That's a great Michael Shannon. I think
I Michael Shannon bit.
Michael Shannon really elevates this movie. As far as like
a lot of I think the performances do in general.
Yeah. But I know that there's a lot of praise that came to Sally Hawkins for this. It's an Oscar Beatty kind of role, playing a mute woman, and still, making us empathize with her and feel for her as a character. It's tricky to do, but I don't think it's that groundbreaking of a performance.
Not really.
But it's also it's an odd year. You got Frances McDormand, who's obviously the big love who everybody's going to get.
Her introductory scene in Three Billboards is bad. She's bad in it.
Yeah.
I don't believe that person exists. But anyways.
I mean, we're much more likely to believe that there's a woman masturbating in a bathtub in the 50s.
Act like clockwork.
Absolutely.
Every time she wakes up. I remember the two things I wanted to talk about now. It's the cameras, and I immediately forgot the other thing. The cameras, where they make a big point of, like, early on when they're all smoking cigarettes in the loading dock, like, we're in a blind spot for that camera. That's the first camera we've seen. And then that's the only camera that they have to ever adjust. There's no cameras in the Fishman lab.
Right. Big oversight.
Like, why are there no... Because they couldn't figure out a way around it. Like, it's just... Yeah, they just don't have any cameras in the top secret Fishman room. Right. The most ludicrous part of the movie is their explanation for why the military wants the Fishman. Now, I've dealt with... Like in the Aliens movies where they keep having like the bad guys like, we need to steal the aliens for the bioweapons division. That's ludicrous. This movie I think is more ridiculous because they're talking about how it's just one throwaway line when they're talking about how the Fishman has like a hard cartilaginous sternum that allows him to switch between lungs. He's got two different sets of lungs, let him breathe water or air. And they're like, they have a throwaway line where one of the scientists says, we're trying to send a man into space. We need to know how he's going to have to survive under the same kind of pressure. No, he's not.
No, not at all.
There's no pressure in space. It's a vacuum.
Yeah.
Like, also, is he going to have to breathe water in space? Like, what?
Are you going to put them in tanks?
Yeah, right. Like, the whole premise of that is ridiculous.
But this movie is so ridiculous from top to bottom that even, like... I legitimately forgot that sequence even happened.
It's one line.
But
it is a single line of dialogue.
But it's like, that even sounds more plausible given the other fantastical shit that's going on.
Yeah.
Like, the most realistic parts of that movie are the government doesn't know what the fuck is going on.
Yes.
And guys in the 50s are racist and homophobic.
Right.
And they're not going to serve you pie.
Yeah. There is some fantastic racism in this film.
Man, a lot of racism, a lot of racism against fish and fishmen in particular.
A lot of fishism.
So here's a philosophical question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a movie where we had a mute janitor man and a fish woman, do you think the male gaziness of this still is that going to turn people off, or is the fantastical nature of it going to keep people alive?
I think the male-centered version of this would be a different movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think the movie would be about how pathetic and weird he is, not like this uplifting romance.
And you know what? That's almost a more interesting movie to me.
Kinda, right?
I think.
Like watching this person in a downward spiral steal a mermaid.
Right.
Like
it's more, that's you get a little Michael Douglas and falling down action thrown in at the very end of that.
Yeah.
Have him go wild and go crazy in this government lab so he can steal the mermaid fish woman goddess.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think people should probably still watch this movie.
So why do you think people should still watch it, even though it's a movie that you don't particularly care for?
The story is not satisfying, but I do get drawn in by Guillermo del Toro. Like, I think his movies are visually beautiful. And he just knows what to do with colors and motion, and just like, the cinematography is really good. And he does these, I appreciate that he does these weird sort of genre defying movies. Like so I guess in that way, I appreciate that this movie got so much attention, because on paper, this is a baffling movie to pitch even, let alone to win all these awards.
And the social media reaction as soon as this movie started to gain legs was everybody just being like, "Oh wait, so it's a movie about a lady who fucks a fish?" But what?
And that's a little reductive,
right? Of course, it's the internet. It's supposed to be reductive.
A little reductive,
but it is a real zany, out there premise for the general public to latch onto and to get mainstream success in the way that it has.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I'm with you on the fact that it is lazily written.
Yeah.
It's
too much convenience in it.
Yeah, it's just too convenient. There's a lot of plot holes that and a lot of devices that are used that don't really need to be used. I figure for somebody who has been working and making visually inventive movies for such a long time, and making really striking parables and movies like Pan's Labyrinth and
Devil's Backbone.
Yeah, Devil's Backbone, and taking, stories that are compelling, and for for him to win his Best Picture Oscar on this, it seems like a waste.
This is not his best film.
No.
I think he has earlier films that are better, and I feel like he is going to make it there. A future movie is going to be better than this. Like, he's got better movies in him still, I think. So yeah, it's weird to give it to this one. I mean, it's like, it almost feels like part of it was like, sort of like Scorsese winning for The Departed, or we're just like, okay, it's your turn now. Like, we got to give you one now.
Right, but Scorsese is so long. If you're going to make Guillermo del Toro wait through things, don't just give him one like,
right,
what?
It's been like 10 years for Guillermo.
Yeah.
Like, it hasn't been that long.
If you know that he's got better movies in him.
Yeah, I feel like he does.
I think he probably does.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know what he's. I mean, I think the sort of general consensus in film world is that he's probably going to get, with this, the clout to make his In the Mountains of Madness H.P. Lovecraft movie.
So jazzed for that.
So we'll see if he can pull that off. If he can finally get that made, because I know he's been trying to do that for a long time.
For I think 10 years.
Yeah,
like
just about
when they were still pitching when they were pitching The Hobbit, I think.
But not this. I mean, we'll see.
And he bailed on The Hobbit. Have you seen his like production sketches and concept stuff for The Hobbit?
No,
he was going to make it. It's pretty gnarly. Like, he made this kind of radical looking Smaug that is like kind of ribbed and skeletal and weird looking.
That sounds real cool.
Yeah, I would have
loved to have seen that.
Right, instead of like the boring same old dragon we got in the movie. I mean, that's a whole thing. Those movies are atrocious.
I've never seen any of the Hobbit movies. I have no desire to see the Hobbit movies.
They're very bad.
Not a particularly. I mean, as far as genre goes, fantasy's not really my bag on screen. Like I've read some. I read The Hobbit in school. It was required reading at my public school. Very strange.
Yeah, that
very
is weird.
Strange choice.
That is weird.
But yeah, it's just, if you're gonna put somebody who's visually inventive and is a well-regarded director and just give him an award that kind of just feels like, okay, cool, now we've dealt with you.
Yeah,
go back and do whatever you want to do.
It might have been I feel kind of bad saying it, but it might have also been a reaction to the Oscars So White stuff from last year.
I mean, maybe, but if it's really a reaction to that, then why are you not giving it to
Get Out?
Get Out, exactly.
Yeah, fucking assholes.
Yeah, you've got every opportunity.
Yeah.
That's a movie that really captured the zeitgeist and critically got a lot of recognition that was very deserving.
And culturally more important than The Shape of Water is.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm super excited for Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
That's going to be, because when I remember having that exact thought when I walked out of Get Out, I was like, that was like a really good Twilight Zone episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it's going to be, look,
Yeah.
Jordan Peele is bound to get an Oscar for more than just screenplay at some point.
Right. If this is him straight out of the gate, then it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Hollywood's in for some real crazy shit going on.
Yeah.
This is a movie, look, I mean, I saw it. I think it's okay. I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
It's a movie that I, at this point, wouldn't recommend to people to go see. I think it's,
Really?
I think, it's too long. I think that you could probably cut out maybe 20 minutes of this movie and it makes more sense and doesn't have some of the problems that I think it runs into.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an oddity, and it won, and it's going to get forgotten.
You could cut the Russian character entirely out of the movie.
Yeah, you don't need that.
He's unnecessary.
I mean, I'm all for a movie having cardboard characters is their characters. You can do that. That's fine. Like, but if you're going to do that, make it a big bombastic comic book movie or something like that.
Right.
Don't make it an intimate drama about a woman fucking a fish man.
Right.
It just feels there's too much disconnect for me for this movie for me to recommend it.
Yeah, I get you.
Tom, dude, thanks so much for coming in, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
I would love to give my guests an opportunity to tell us about where we can hear you. You got some podcasts and some
Thanks.
things.
Yeah, I do Best Bad Movie Ever on the Unpopular Opinion Network with David Christopher Bell, and then David Bell and I also have our own podcast network called Story Mode, which you can support through our Patreon, which is called Gamefully Unemployed. I know that's a little confusing, but basically it's Gamefully Unemployed, GAMEFULLY, and then Unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds, where we do some video game streaming, we do some movie streaming, and then we also do our podcasts, which are all connected through that Patreon. So far, they're all free. So if you go to Apple Podcasts or whatever and just search for Story Mode, you'll find all of the podcasts that we put out. And you can find me on Twitter at Start the Machine.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
You can find me on the internet at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for upcoming show dates. If you're in San Diego, I'm coming to you this weekend. I'll be there Friday with Willie Hunter and Frank Castillo at the Comedy Palace, 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. And please rate and subscribe and leave a review, because this podcast has been coming up. We're almost on 40 episodes, and we have 6 reviews.
Oof.
I know. It hurts me on the inside a little bit.
Leave a review. It takes so little.
Leave a review, please. It
takes so little.
It takes like no time at all.
Just click the star and say, yeah. Like, that's all we need.
Works for me. Guy, this is in Blockbusting. Guys, go see something good for a change.